Good morning and welcome to the 2021 first quarter gathering of the UACDC Partners Coalition. It feels like 2021 took a long time to get here, but we made it. I'm Sarah Combs, CEO of University Area CDC, and I want to thank you for choosing to spend a little time with us this morning. While I wish I could see you all in person today, I'm still so incredibly grateful for the opportunity to come together and learn about the exciting initiatives and partnerships that are happening in the university area, as well as hear honest and open dialogue regarding real issues that we're currently facing. If you're joining us for the first time today, welcome. The University Area CDC Partners Coalition is made up of businesses, organizations, and individuals who have a vested interest in the university area and a mission to improve it. We believe there is strength in numbers, and working together is the quickest and most efficient way to see real growth in the community. More information about this group's purpose and objectives can be found at uacdc.org/Partners Coalition. I'd also like to invite everyone watching to type your name and organization in the chat box so we can see who's with us this morning and do a little virtual networking. Today's gathering just would not be possible without our wonderful UACDC staff who are just rock stars and our amazing board of directors. And as always, I want to give a big special thank you to our board chairman, Mr. Tony Coleman with ACES Group, for his continued support of the Partners Coalition. I also want to give a huge shout out to USAA for their sponsorship and support of our community. We love you, USAA. I'd also like to use this opportunity to congratulate the 2020 Community Impact Award winners. If you're unfamiliar with this initiative, it's an annual joint effort between UACDC and Tampa's IP to recognize outstanding organizations in the university area. The recipient of the Community Catalyst Award was Fuzzy Taco Shop. The Creative Cooperation Award went to Tampa Family Health Centers. DTCC, the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, received the Corporate Changemaker Award, and a newly added category for 2020 was the Uptown Resiliency Award, and that went to none other than our friends at Feeding Tampa Bay. Congratulations to you all. For more information about the award categories and recipients of each, visit uacdc.org/impact. And lastly, we always encourage you to be active on your social media platforms to share the information distributed in these gatherings using hashtag UACDC Partners Coalition when doing so. And make sure to follow us at Univ Area CDC on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the most up-to-date offerings and information. Now it is my sincere pleasure to introduce Ms. Bree Lucky, Director of Marketing for UACDC, who will serve as today's host for our gathering. Over to you, Bree.
Thanks, Sarah, and I'm happy to be here with all of you today. For those of you who are new to our Partners Coalition gatherings, they're made up of three main components, which are community investment, focusing forward, and small biz equals big impact. Our first presentation, centered on community investment, focuses on the importance of pedestrian pathways and infrastructure improvements currently taking place in the Uptown University area. For this presentation, it's my pleasure to introduce Erica Nelson, Director of Operations for University Area CDC, and John Patrick, Director of Strategic Infrastructure Planning for Hillsborough County. And now, our community investment presentation.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us to learn more about the exciting infrastructure improvements happening in the Uptown University area community. We are standing right in front of our Uptown Sky development, where we will soon be building 61 multifamily units in partnership with Blue Skies Communities. And as you can see, where brand new sidewalks are being built. Today we are here with our good friend and partner, John Patrick, who is the Director of Strategic Infrastructure Planning for Hillsborough County. We've been working together for the last few years to see how we can create a more walkable and bikeable community to encourage better connectivity to jobs, education, opportunities, and so much more. I can almost guarantee that most people watching this today drive themselves to work. Well, unless you're working from home, then walking is definitely your main mode. But people like John Patrick and I want to change that by creating pedestrian pathways that encourage you to get outside and walk. From sidewalks, bike lanes, speed bumps, landscaping, local businesses, and more, all of this plays a part in your daily decision to walk, bike, or drive. So JP, can you tell our partners a little more about what we are doing to create safe pedestrian pathways in the community?
Of course. Good morning, everyone. It's always great to get out of the office and talk to the community about infrastructure, upcoming projects, and the future of Uptown University area. My role in the county is to look at opportunities for providing holistic infrastructure, from recommending land use changes, identifying projects for better connectivity, to promote alternative modes of transportation other than driving. So what that actually means is going into the community, understanding existing infrastructure, and see how it can be improved. A great example of what we have done for the first time in the county is conducting a preliminary land use and transportation study on 131st Avenue. This determined that a 4-lane roadway would have a negative impact on the community. So instead, we changed the thought process to better fit the roadway for pedestrian and bicycle, including sidewalks, bike lanes, and other community enhancements.
That's right. JP and his team were able to give us valuable data that shows that this community needs sidewalks and proper infrastructure in order to thrive. For example, did you know that over 30% of households in this area are zero-vehicle households, and that 30% of those who do drive only travel less than 2 miles? This is why we're so passionate about creating pedestrian pathways to connect the community to resources that are just walking distance from their house.
That's right, Erica. Right now, the county is working with UACDC to install pedestrian crosswalks, crossing signals, and sidewalks to create a safe pathway from Moat Elementary to UACDC and surrounding parks where kids can access after-school programming. The most important thing is that the children in the community are able to travel to school and make it back home safely.
And that brings us to why we are here today. We are so excited to announce that the Mort Sidewalk construction project has officially began. Just to demonstrate the power of partnership this took, we submitted a federal Safe Routes to School application in 2017 with Hillsborough County Public Works, Mort Elementary, the Sheriff's Office, the Center for Urban Transportation Research, the Federal Department of Transportation, the Department of Health, consultants like Tyndale Oliver, and many, many more that help make this happen.
In addition to more than $500,000 in federal grant funding, the county supported this with additional $230,000 in funding needed to complete this project. We are also just worked on UACDC to submit a Safe Route to Parks application, which we will continue to work and hold community conversations to hear residents' needs and relay infrastructure improvements happening in their neighborhood.
Yes, and we're starting to see some real positive change that's transforming the community from the inside out. From more elementary sidewalks to Harvest Hope crosswalks, 131st roadway improvements, flashing pedestrian beacons on 15th Street, and much more. It's a new day in the Uptown University area community where you can get outside, walk around, and trust that you're going to get to your destination safely.
Thank you all so much for learning more about how we create pedestrian pathways in Uptown University area. Please be sure to join UACDC on the April 22nd Partners Coalition gathering to learn more about community investments and the power of partnership. Thank you for being a partner for this important work, and stay tuned as this is just the beginning.
Thanks, Erica and John. I don't know about you, but I saw several items in that segment that have been long awaited in this area. Pedestrian safety in our community remains a top priority, and it's exciting to see some of the needed improvements coming to fruition. We'll continue to follow these developments as they progress and share updates with all Partners Coalition members. Now let's move right along to the Focusing Forward portion of our event. During the last gathering, we featured a panel discussion that focused on law enforcement and the community. For today's conversation, we shift towards equality, equity, justice, and policy. And as with our fourth quarter panel discussion, this topic was determined from a community conversation that was held in partnership with Safe and Sound Hillsborough. The purpose of the conversation was to establish topics specific to the Uptown University area in which Partners Coalition members would benefit from hearing further dialogue during our quarterly gatherings. The series features key stakeholders discussing real concerns, opportunities, and initiatives happening in our community. For today's panel conversation, Mr. Freddy Barton, Executive Director of Safe and Sound Hillsborough, will once again serve as our moderator, and panelists include Representative Fentrice Driskell, member of the Florida House of Representatives for District 63. Dr. Heather Curry, Lead Projects Coordinator of Government Relations and Strategic Services for Hillsborough County, as well as Mr. John Dengler, owner of Wellbuilt Bikes and University Area CDC board member. So without further ado, our Focusing Forward panel conversation.
So we're going to jump right in. So we're talking today about policy, we're talking about equity, we're talking about a couple of things that are very important to the university area. But first, we have to let everyone know who's in the room, right? So if you could just give us a little bit about yourself, tell us who you are, your role, and then what experience and or support have you given in the past or are you currently working on to help individuals in the university area? We'll first start with our state representative. Go ahead.
Hi, so I'm State Representative Fentrice Driskell for Florida House District 63, which covers much of North Tampa and North Hillsborough counties. And I love it that the university area is right in the heart of the district. So from very early on, this is my second term, I've made sure to be a partner to University Area CDC and whatever it is that they need in terms of making sure that they can execute and carry out their mission.
Very good. Dr. Curry.
I'm Heather Curry. I'm the lead staff for the Commission on Human Trafficking and the Equity Project for Hillsborough County. I work with government relations and strategic services. And in that role, we're really looking at an equity profile and starting to move toward addressing human trafficking from the perspective of equity and using that as a primary lens for community-based work. In my past, I worked as a professor at USF and interfaced with the university area CDC at that point to try to create partnerships with students to do volunteer work and to really kind of get to know the community around the university and draw that permeability out.
Very good. And John, before you introduce yourself, we know that you are coming from a very special role as a resident of the university area. So not just about you yourself and what you've done in the university area, but what you see as a resident in that area.
Well, yeah, so, let me say, like, once upon a time when I was younger, I went out with like a local church that was doing this meal for the homeless, and it was out downtown, and I went in this alley and I met this man in an alley, shared some food, listened to his story, went home that night and felt terrible. I was like, I got a bed, pillows, clothes in the closet, running water that heats up, roof over my head. I don't really want to live in a world that works like this, where this beautiful brother is in an alley with no food, reeks of urine, this and that. And so since then, kind of developed a little community and organization known as The Well, ended up planting Wellbuilt Bikes, which is right in the university area there. But just making up excuses to build relationships with folks that are kind of on the margins or whatever to learn from and walk with, really. But we've been doing everything that we can to kind of just walk alongside and really just practice things we learned in preschool, like sharing, learn to listen to one another and walk with one another. And so right now in the university area, we have a big challenge is transportation. And a solution we found is like, there's a bunch of bikes that go wasted. We could refurbish them. We could let people earn a bike through community service hours. And then that's been an incredible way for us to kind of address that need in the community. So that's what we're doing right now.
Awesome. And just so people know, what's the name of the organization?
The Well is the name of the nonprofit, but it's Wellbuilt Bikes.
Wellbuilt Bikes. All right, thank you. So thank you everyone for introducing yourself, and we're getting ready to go into our first round. So Representative Driskell, we saw over the last year a lot of different things that have really affected us nationally and even here locally. And after what we saw in Minneapolis with the tragic death of George Floyd, we saw protests erupt. And we even saw some here locally. And in the university area was one of the epicenters of most of the damage that occurred. We saw that because people wanted to react to what happened. But we now know that the responsibility of getting that area back up and going is on the residents. So what are some things that you're taking from a legislative approach as we go into legislative session? What are some things that you're taking to Tallahassee to hopefully bring back support for the university area?
So for me as a lawmaker, I think, how can I take that energy and translate it into legislation and make sure that we say we see you and we hear you, we feel you, we understand, and we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that you are treated fairly. So I look at that from a few perspectives. The first being affordable housing. We know that housing is a really big issue in Florida and in Hillsborough County. We know that families should not be paying more than 30% of their income to affordable housing. So how can we make an impact there? In the legislature, it's my role to try to make sure that we protect the Sadowski Affordable Housing Trust Fund so that the state is giving those grants to the counties and to the cities like we are obligated to do. I mean, this is earmarked money for affordable housing, but what has happened over the past 20 or so years is oftentimes the legislature will raid that fund, redirect that money in other ways. So I make sure that we're going to protect that so that people have safe housing. And speaking of safety, the issue with the protests and the treatment of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd, was him not being able to walk safely down the street as a Black man. So from that perspective, to me, we need to be looking at legislation on police reform and community safety. So the Florida Legislative Black Caucus, of which I am a member, and the Florida Democratic Caucus, of which I'm a member, are partnering together to put forth a platform of legislation that will address everything from making sure that we are revising and strengthening the minimum standards for law enforcement agencies across the state in terms of training, making sure they all have implicit bias training, making sure that there's de-escalation training, so that there's an obligation to try to de-escalate before use of force is applied. And then the last thing I'll mention is economic development. We know that there are businesses here, like we have a business owner here on the panel, they are the lifeblood of the community and provide employment opportunities. So making sure that we're doing what we can to see the CARES money go to who it's supposed to go. That's really federal level, but the state
still draws down.
Has some influence. So making sure that money goes where it's supposed to. And then also looking at programs like there's a really great program, the Black Business Loan Program, is trying to help minority businesses get the lift that they need and become employers in the community.
Awesome. Dr. Curry, so we're talking right now about Tallahassee, but then let's look at the local effort. So you have a unique role in that you have two major initiatives that you're helping to launch. One, you are leading the equity profile work with the county, and then two, you're the lead on the Commission Against Human Trafficking, right? But the word equity comes into both of those things because we have to look at supports that are available to residents. Long-standing knowledge shows, or there's a long-standing sense of knowledge that the university area has been plagued by several things. Lack of affordable housing, lack of adequate services for mental health as well as substance abuse. We know that. With your work with the county, what message do you have from us as far as things that are being done at the county level to address equity so that adequate services and supports for mental health and substance abuse are put in place so we don't see potential victims of any other crimes?
Right, and I think that equity as the primary lens is really that clutch component, because now it takes all of, say, for example, human trafficking. Human trafficking isn't the problem, it's a symptom of a much bigger problem. And so looking at things like affordable housing, where you have precarious living situations now, people have a constant anxiety, an economic anxiety, a social cultural anxiety, and that manifests through mental health issues. So it's, it both creates mental illness, and the conditions that come along with that both create the gap in equity, but they start out of that gap in equity, out of the historic disparities that create that persistent anxiety. And I think, John, you probably have seen this firsthand also in the work that you do. So I did talk to Jean Early, who's the Director of Healthcare Services, this morning to get an idea of what all the county is doing presently so that we can look forward and say what we need to do. And he gave me a 3-page list during the course of our conversation, which is pretty cool because it indicates that there's some robust attention being paid to this. So they spent in the last fiscal year $57 million on healthcare countywide. And that's something that they will continue to fund. And so they also have a wellness program. I think what's really relevant for folks in the university area is that we have a Hillsborough County healthcare program. And if people don't know about that, that provides really nice, comprehensive healthcare. And I think that that's something that if folks don't know about that program, they definitely need to talk with us at the county. Out of that, they developed what is now a virtual, it used to be through the CRCs. But now, since obviously COVID, everything shuts down and it's virtual. But it's still, they've got mindfulness classes, they've got cooking classes, they've got nutrition and exercise classes that they offer. And a lot of that, of course, addresses the conditions that create mental health concerns. So I really encourage people to look into that. But I think that the work of the equity profile really allows us to tap into community-driven policy. Rather than it being from the institution to the community, it creates a permeability. And in these conversational spaces, our job from the county perspective is to listen, not to tell. And so it's the equity profile project as we move forward. The profile itself, and people who've known me have heard me say this, it's just a product, it's just a report. But what it indicates and what it animates is this process where we start really talking to each other and listening.
So John, kind of wrap this up on this perspective. So you have a state lawmaker that's here, that's going to Tallahassee. Session's going on right now, or committee week is going on right now. And Dr. Curry has the ear of the county commission to talk about several things, especially equity and justice, and looking at things from a different perspective. What do you think has not been addressed that both in Tallahassee and at the county level should probably be addressed with respect to the university area?
So let me start by like picking up on what was addressed, I guess. So, and I'll just use an example, like, cause I know a lot of folks that live on the streets, right? And now this isn't it's in the county, but in the city of Tampa, for example, it's illegal to fall asleep in a public park. That's a law that was passed, right? And then that plays out with law enforcement. So it's legislative, and then the way it actually is. And so you're mentioning like police training, minimums, whatever. And the thing in our county and our city that a lot of folks have been really pushing for and fighting for is something like a civilian police review board that's actually real, right? That is made up of folks from the community. Something that I would really love to see here locally. But then something I've been thinking about, and I think it applies county. I mean, every city that I've ever heard of has what I believe is called like a Human Rights Act, something like that has like these protected, so we talk about racism, and you can't discriminate based on race, gender, sexuality, whatever, and disability. I don't know, there's a bit of a list, but I'll tell you what's not on the list: status. So there is family status, like you can't discriminate because you're a single woman or something like that, but there isn't status economically, and there isn't status with housing. And so there's this missing element, and all of those classes of traditionally protected people are disproportionately affected by economic disadvantage and housing challenges, which we talked about, right? And so I can't discriminate against you because you're a black woman, but I can because you're poor. Because poor people, actually, in the way we have our system set up, it's all economic. Your value is actually how many dollars are in your pocket. And if you don't have dollars in your pocket, you're not valuable. And then laws that aren't even intended to affect the poor, for example, like what's one that's, so like there's laws about food safety, okay? Those are great laws. We should have those laws. But they're applied by law enforcement to keep churches from sharing food with the homeless in the spirit of don't feed the pigeons in the actual neighborhood. They're run off, and pastors are being threatened with arrest because of a food safety law, which is not intended for that, but it's being leveraged for that in that way. I could go on, but I know we need to wrap that up. Yeah.
Thank you. So we've got one point that we already know is coming out of this. So thank you. We're going to our next topic. So for our next topic, I want to address community violence and community safety. And John and Dr. Curry, I want you guys to kick us off. This series it started because we saw a need to go into respective communities and have these discussions on a small level so that we could really get some good dialogue. We see the effects that the incident in Minneapolis and other cities had and how it permeated all throughout the nation and then brought back. We know that there's a lot of work being done, but we also know that there's a lot of work to be done. So from your perspectives, what do you think is working right now to improve community and law enforcement relations, to reduce community violence, and to keep people feeling safe in their communities? And then, what do you think still needs to be done? And I'll start with you, John, first.
Sure. You know what I think is working, and this is, I could just say from our own work, what I've seen work is common tables, right? So we have a community dinner where folks need some food, but and someone might come to volunteer and someone might need a sandwich, but when they actually talk to each other and listen to each other and know each other, it's hard to maintain a lot of the prejudices that we bring or we hear from somewhere else or whatever. It's like knowing one another. So the University Area Community Development Center, building up a park where we can have common table, common ground, common space. There's these different things that we could do together. And I actually think more of the same. So more block parties, right? I know COVID's kind of challenging for that, but I'm no, legitimately, like bringing folks together. I mean, even what was going on at the mall when all that went on, I went out there for a little bit and it was half party, half fight. Like it was in waves, right? But like there is a way in which it's like people need to be together. They need to burn off that steam and cross those racial and economic boundaries. And you know, police can come too, I guess.
Right. Okay. Dr. Curry, I want you to pick up on police can come too, and then give us some more.
I think it's actually requisite that police are a part of this conversation. If the fractures start there between community members and police forces, then we have to bridge that gap and learn how to hear each other. And I think that the community conversations that can emerge around the equity work can open up those conversations with that level of intention. So where everybody's talking with one another. And if you are listening as a policymaker or as an officer of the law, and your job is just to listen, that's it, then how can we hear each other first? And I think that the county's poised through the equity work to really support that and amplify it. Right? We're not the arbiters of it, we're not driving the bus, but we're providing the bus for other people to be a part of it, right? So I think that there's a lot of work to be done around connection. I think that's the primary, and it's so basic and human. And that's, I think, also really bringing young humans to the table, making sure that they're present, that their voices are really heard. So much of what we do is talk at them, but there are some incredible groups, just loosely organized, talking about, you know, folks in this group called Hear Our Voices, who didn't know what to do. Students came to the former director of the Center for Girls and said, Sartura, we need some place to talk about this. We don't feel safe having these conversations. We don't have our trusted adults, and we need that. And so they started up just a conversation group. It's a Zoom call, of course. And there's, yes, and there is something definitely being lost in the Zoom call where you don't have that embodiment and you're not with each other in the same way. But the conversations are there, and there are, if we can richly network and really have young humans telling us what policies we need to move forward in a world they want to live in, where they're going to be the leadership.
Right, we can't talk about doing something to advance, you know, opportunities for the individuals if we don't invite them to the table. So if it's about me, include me, right? So, and now this is a forum to talk about equity and policy. So as the policymaker on this panel, Representative, I want you to close us out with this. You mentioned earlier that affordable housing is one of the things that you are, you know, just taking on head on in Tallahassee. And I had to look at my notes here because the University Area CDC has done so much great work. But just to highlight, here in this area, they have the Uptown Sky Project, which is going to be 61 units on 12th and Fletcher for low-income residents. They have the University Townhomes, which is going to be anywhere between 20 and 25 townhomes for home ownership across the park, 10 cottages for home ownership adjacent to the park, and then 23 different parcels of land, their land bank for attainable housing and green space. A lot of great work is being done in that area, but still there's a lot of work to be done. The University Area CDC and other organizations have worked hard to change the phrase suitcase city. And the only way that can truly change is to get support for affordable housing. Representative, I'm putting you on the spot. I want to know exactly what are you going to do and champion in Tallahassee for affordable housing?
I am so proud of the University Area CDC for what it has been able to do. I know and understand that, unfortunately, government's not the answer to every problem, but what government needs to do is make sure that the funding is there for affordable housing and making sure that the regulatory footprint is there so that it's not, you know, choking off innovation when it comes to affordable housing. So with respect to the funding, we talked a little bit about the Sadowski Affordable Housing Trust Fund. In its wisdom, the legislature years ago earmarked certain funds and to make sure that that's just designated for affordable housing. And when you look at the growth that Florida has had, and particularly our region and how many people move to the Tampa Bay region daily or weekly, it's astonishing. The demand is outpacing the level of funding that the legislature has been providing. So I will tell you that in meetings that I have particularly with our county commissioners, the one thing in common, they all have different kind of pet projects, but the one hymnal page that they all sing from is affordable housing. And please don't touch that funding because we need it. So that I fight for. And then the other piece is the regulatory footprint, making sure that the legislature is not overstepping and trying to erode, we call it home rule. Anytime we take the authority away from cities and counties to determine their own destiny, because they're the leaders on the ground here who understand what their community needs. So that's something that I also try to be a champion for, is home rule, to make sure that, you know, when Sarah Combs has a great idea about something that the university area CDC can do, she can go to the city of Tampa and get what she needs to get that done, and not have the state overreaching and saying, no, this is not appropriate.
Very good. Well, I think those are great responses. So we are here closing out our conversation on equity and policy. The timing couldn't be better because we're looking at legislative session. We have a new year. Happy New Year to all of you. Happy New Year to everyone watching. And we will continue this Moving Forward series. Thank you all.
We'd like to thank all of the panelists for taking time out of their busy schedules to join us for that important discussion. From housing disparities to social injustices, we know there is still so much work to be done, but it's encouraging to hear about the focus of our various government sectors and how they can impact the day-to-day lives of residents in this community. We will continue to utilize our Partners Coalition forum to have these conversations and engage in progressive dialogue. And we'd love to hear from you on the initiatives you or your organization are engaging in to improve the Uptown University area and foster community relations. Our collaborative efforts can truly embark the change needed for this area to grow and prosper for years to come. We now look towards the last segment of our presentation. Small biz equals big impact. And today we're shining a light on Net SBS. They may be a small organization now, but they're doing big things in this community, and they're exactly what this segment is all about. Let's take a look and find out why.
Hey, Chris. Glad to have another one of our discussions. This time, letting everybody in. I'm Mike Hamilton. I'm the head of growth at NetSVS.
And I'm Chris Morency. I'm the co-founder at NetSVS. We are a company that focuses on newer technology, especially automation, to help companies be more efficient and, by the way, make their employees actually happier. So I look forward to having this talk and having everybody learn a little bit more about what we do.
Thanks. So yeah, so just talking about that, right? Like letting people know what we do, who we are, a little bit about kind of some of the things that we're doing. So a big part of this is a community, what we're doing in the community, how we're bringing the community and bringing the community together. Talk a little bit about, you know, how we've been able to do that over the last year or so. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So we moved into the university area about a year ago, just before COVID hit, and that was a really important thing for us to do. It was really a big part of our strategic plan. And one of the big things that we do is a program called the Emerging Technology Program, and that's when we take students who are in college, doing their bachelor's, doing their associate degree, and we train them up for the different roles that can be used in emerging technology. And one of the big things is, and I really want to put this out there while we have this on camera, right? It's not only about technology, right? You don't have to be a developer or coder, in this field. There's room for analysts, for people persons, right? I like to say, and different roles, quality assurance and everything. So there's a role for everyone, no matter what your background is. So this program is really big for us, and we want to work with the partners in the area, the businesses, to actually make it a little bit more viable, because that's where the hands-on experience comes from.
Thanks so much about the partners. So I know there's been several partners that we've been working to kind of help us get things off the ground and to really build this program. So just, I guess, a little bit about how we're connected to the community.
Yeah.
On that side.
I mean, yeah, so we work really closely with the Innovation Partnership. UACDC is really big. RD Management, and Chris Bowen is a really big deal. And they've all been instrumental, right, in allowing us to kind of move in here, into the mall, into a really beautiful office space. So I'm really excited about it and really appreciate it.
And why are we doing this? Like, what is our connection? Like, people always want to know the why, right? Why do we do this? Why are we connected to this community in Uptown?
Yeah, so I'm really big on social responsibility meets corporate responsibility. I'm responsible for my employees to ensure that they have upward career mobility, increased salaries, all that stuff. So whatever you do, socially, you have to make sure it makes sense corporate as well. From a social standpoint, right? I went to school here. I moved here, right? I spent years here, right? Going through some really tough times, right? and seeing some of the stigma of the area and all that kind of stuff, but also knowing what the potential is in the area. And I'm really big on the fact that there's inefficiency in our system in terms of not utilizing some of our underserved talent. So for me, moving back here and being able to, I hate the term give back, because it's not really about giving back, it's actually fixing an inefficiency in the system and at the same time doing something that makes your company continue to grow. So again, I'm here because I have background here. I went through some really tough times and some really good times that molded me to who I am today here. And it's always been part of the grand vision to move back into this area and be able to give back and at the same time grow the company.
Thanks so much, Chris, for helping unleash the potential in the Uptown area.
I appreciate it,
It's been a pleasure to have our talks as we do every day. So
yeah, know this.
Glad to bring everyone in.
All right, cool, man. Thanks.
For more information on Net SBS, including their pre-apprenticeship program, visit mynetsbs.com. And if you know of a small business who's making a big impact in the Uptown University area, we'd love to feature them during an upcoming gathering. Simply email their information to belucky@uacdc.org. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. It has been my pleasure to host the first quarter Partners Coalition Gathering of 2021. Before we go, I'd like to quickly remind you of a few upcoming events and initiatives from UACDC and our partners. To be conscious of time, I won't go into specifics for each item, but full details can be found on our website at uacdc.org. The 2021 Uptown Music Festival is coming up Saturday, May 15th at University Area Community Park, and there's a great lineup of artists this year. VIP and general admission tickets are available for purchase, and there are sponsor and vendor opportunities as well. We continue to offer free adult certification trainings through our Invest Workforce program. Custodial maintenance certification classes are coming up on February 23rd and 24th, and we're now proud to offer certified nursing assistant course scholarships for 3 local institutions to individuals living in the 33612 and 33613 zip codes. We're also partnering with AMI Kids Workforce Development Program to offer career and job training for a variety of disciplines to individuals ages 16 to 24. Our Prodigy Cultural Arts and Get Moving programs are currently offering virtual and in-person classes in a variety of curriculums and activities. The Learning Academy of Basketball offers a weekly tutoring program for students in grades 6 through 12 out at the University Area Computer Lab. Hillsborough County Parks and Recreation is once again offering public health and fitness classes at the University Area Community Center for all ages. And we continue our partnership with Compassion Life Church and their monthly Be the Difference snack pack giveaway events. The next one is on Saturday, February 13th at Harvest Hope Park. And lastly, I invite you to save the date of Thursday, April 22nd for our second Partners Coalition Gathering of 2021. Right now, we're unsure if we will finally be able to meet in person again, but we will continue to progress forward and keep this group engaged in the best way possible. Until then, we hope 2021 is off to a wonderful start for all of you, and we look forward to the opportunities this new year will present. Take care, and we'll see you soon.